covering up for the big guy
In the anguish.
by all of the co-conspirators, elected officials, members of the D.C. press corps, Hollywood, all the institutional elites, et cetera, et cetera. There's some real silliness here, though, too. Elaine Healy is a practicing geriatric physician and certified nursing home medical director.
Mm-hmm.
As a geriatric medical specialist, I thought this was a Babylon Bee story when Amy first raised this a day or two ago. That's people suggesting that he's a victim of elder abuse.
Right.
Elaine Healy, Dr. Elaine Healy, as a geriatric medical specialist, I'm all too familiar with the telltale signs of elder abuse. So as an alarmed citizen, I have referred former President Joe Biden to the Adult Protective Services Division of Delaware's Department of Health and Social Services as a likely elder abuse victim, naming Jill Biden, Dr. Kevin O'Connor, his doctor, and former Biden Chief of Staff Jeffrey Zients as possible perpetrators. What about Ron Klain? Elder abuse is an intentional act or failure to act by a caregiver or another trusted person that causes or creates a risk of harm to an older adult. She goes on, talking about a sinister type of elder abuse involving the exploitation of an elderly individual for the abuser's financial, personal, or in this case, political gain. It seems apparent that those closest to Joe Biden, people upon whom he was and remains dependent, usurped the power and authority of his office for their own benefit, while professionals who had duty to protect him failed to do so. Okay, this is ridiculous. Because the big guy, this strips the big guy of agency. It's
not his fault.
He was the top of the pyramid as it pertains to this hillbilly crime family from Wilmington, Delaware. He had agency. He had agency all the way along. And to try to offload this at this point, not, this victim, he is a victim. And all this cultural zeitgeist towards figuring out a way to make somebody a victim to get back at somebody else because you're trying to protect the person who actually did have agency and is party to the wrongdoing. This is silly.
It's all nonsense, or as we say in Chicago, bull crap.
Seth Moulton, also full of nonsense, or as we say in Chicago, bullcrap. Moulton on with Martha McCallum. This is so ham-handed. Trying to conflate the same thing they tried in the run-up to the 2024 election, trying to conflate Trump's mental acuity with Biden's. Seth Moulton really is shameless, and he is one of the congressmen who has been outed by Jake Tapper as having expressed serious reservations about Biden's mental acuity prior to the meat of the 24 election cycle, but of course didn't say anything publicly. And now he's trying to cover his backside just like everybody else in this crew.
You were with him on two different occasions and had serious questions about his abilities. 70 to 80% in two different polls, Wall Street Journal and CNN, of the American public said he can't mentally or physically do the job anymore. So really, I think this has become a question, and I think it's a valid question for all of the people concerned. Why was he able to still be the president at that point?
Here's my point. I saw him once at Normandy, and I had this question. But the people who saw him on a much more regular basis, his own cabinet officials never had that discussion, and yet Trump's cabinet did. So I don't understand why you're defending Trump when his cabinet was literally having a discussion about taking the presidential powers away from him, and yet Biden's cabinet, who saw him every day, didn't have that discussion.
I thought that discussion seemed ridiculous at that point, honestly, because there wasn't any indication that he wasn't capable, and certainly polls weren't showing that he wasn't capable. But I'm asking
well, actually, if you don't follow the Constitution, you're pretty incapable because you're supposed to actually uphold the oath that you swore to protect and defend the Constitution. So if you're going to defend January 6th, go ahead, go to the grave defending January 6th.
I completely
Boy, how about shoehorning January 6th in this conversation? That's a quadruple bank shot.
All right, that's the point where I turn Fox News off because they allow this crap.
Well, I mean, actually, you should platform a Seth Moulton as an exemplar of the preternatural dishonesty and shamelessness of the people that were involved in perpetuating all of these lies surrounding Joe Biden and continue to do so, because the only way to keep people's attention is to keep this sort of silliness in front of them and hope that they want to visit some accountability on people like Seth Moulton and his political brethren. Michael Goodwin is a New York Post columnist. He joins us now. Michael, thank you for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Oh, it's a pleasure, guys. Thank you.
So, I mean, you know,
great column, by the way.
Yeah, there's so much that has transpired over the last several days. Let's just give you the floor to offer sort of your summary of it.
The floor, huh? Okay. Look, I think there are so many elements to this that it is hard to get your hands around the whole thing. And you know, it goes back, of course, to the Robert Hur interview with Biden in October of 23 that was just released, snippets of it just released in the last 10 days or so. And the White House, of course, and Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, refused to release the audio, although they had released an edited transcript. And the word edited comes into play here because the audio really shows Joe Biden what a train wreck he really was in that interview. And when Robert Hur reported that he basically wasn't going to indict Biden or recommend an indictment because no jury would ever convict such a pathetic old man with a poor memory. And the Democrats went crazy. This was, you know, he was a Republican plant, her, and you know, so now that we have this, the audio, and now that we have the diagnosis of cancer and these books coming out about, you know, what was going on behind the scenes, I dare say it looks worse than I think we could have imagined.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me is the main takeaway here, is that what was going on behind the scenes. We had inklings, we had visions, we had snapshots. Now we have the movie. And you see what was going on there. I mean, it really is a disgrace. It calls into question all kinds of decisions, including the commutations and pardons, I think more than 2,000. Who signed them? This issue of the auto pen, I think, is legitimately in play now.
Perfect.
And I think we're going to find more. More people now are going to be emboldened by these findings, and I think we're going to find more. I mean, the one thing that sticks in my mind that has, you know, came out earlier, but I think we're getting more detail now, is that the cabinet members couldn't even talk to him directly for the last year or so, that there were no cabinet meetings really. And so who was running the government? How was the government? Was it just automatic pilot?
They couldn't talk. They couldn't talk to him, but they could go on CNN and MSNBC and talk about how probing and exacting he was.
Yes, I mean, that Mayorkas video that you're probably talking about, I mean, it's exhausting to go up against him. I mean, the details he demands, and they all said that kind of stuff. I mean, they all ought to face the music for this now. This is a very serious thing. The United States did not have a functioning president, and we know we didn't have a functioning vice president.
The two
who the hell was running this place?
The two questions I would ask you is, number one, is Jake Tapper going to wear a trench coat and in the movie? Is he like a Humphrey Bogart character in the movie? And two, where is the American anger at their White House being taken away from them by the deep state? Where is the anger of the American people? Are they allowing themselves to be subjugated by just their go along, get along?
Well, I'll answer your first question first. I think yes, there will be raincoats, and we'll have to come up with a good title for that movie. All the President's Yes Men, perhaps. Or,
that's good.
But nobody saw anything. Look, John, you asked a good question about the public on this, and as always, there are active people engaged in this who care very much about it.
Yes.
Do they represent maybe 20% or 30% of the population? I think the other side of this, though, is even more worrisome, which is that I think most of the others have tuned out. They've tuned out politics. They've tuned out government, except as, occasionally when it hits them personally. But I think the cynicism toward government, particularly the big institutions in American life, whether it's, the Internal Revenue Service, the FBI, there's no trust. And, of course, the media. And Gallup has done these surveys over the years that reflect the declining trust in American institutions. And I would just say quickly, they started this survey, I believe, in 1958. And the question was, do you believe that the federal government tries to do the right thing most of the time? It's pretty broad. You can slice that a couple of different ways. And in the 50s, the answer was 74% said yes. Now we're down into the high 20s, low 30s, low 20s, depending on the year and the news flow. I mean, there's just no trust in these. James Comey is a great example, right? Just think, you trusted James Comey. Oh, my God, what a fool were you, right? I mean, that kind of thing, I think, is happening to a lot of people across this country in particularly the last generation. It happens to different people for different reasons at different times, of course, but the trend is what is the most frightening. I mean, even trust in the military has declined. The last time I looked at these numbers, the most trusted institutions in American life were small businesses. And you would have to say that's because people know who owns those businesses. It's a face-to-face, it's a personal relationship. Mm-hmm. Whether it's the baker, the hardware store, or your auto mechanic, people trust the people they deal with. It's the distance created and the anonymity of the bureaucracies that I think people have just no faith in whatsoever.
That's a really interesting perspective. And part of that is also because small businesses deliver what they promise. Otherwise, they're not going to keep the customer. And, of course, government is not bound by that, it doesn't seem. But I tell you, it's funny you say that, because on the one hand, you say, well, that's a bit of good news, because if you don't trust the institution, then you're unlikely to willingly fork over so much of your money to it and so much of your sovereignty to it. But I think what actually happens, and I've learned this living in a kleptocracy called Illinois, is that when people have no trust in the institution, what they do is to say, okay, I know how it works here. You got to play the game to get your special deal, your waiver, your inside play. So it's a cut me in, cut it out. I don't mind the corruption. That's not what bothers me. It only bothers me if I can't figure out a way to get my piece of it. And that actually perpetuates this model that is completely predicated on mistrust, but grows anyway.
No, that's a fair observation. If somebody's stealing my money, maybe I can get in there and steal somebody else's.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
But I think the difficulty, of course, is it's as though we're describing Russia or lots of other kleptocracies around the world. America was supposed to be different. America has been different. And I think that we're going down this road in ways that, for example, Henry Kissinger, during the Iraq-Afghanistan era, said that the mere fact that George Bush and the Congress could effectively declare war and people would rush to volunteer, and we would have an all-volunteer military, and we would have no trouble finding sufficient troops and productive and qualified people to do this work. And he said many countries in the world cannot do that. There is no trust. There is no willingness to volunteer. And so they have to do conscription, et cetera. I wonder if we're not further down that road than we were then. And we saw that with the military enlistments falling. Now they've shot up again, but will they stay there?
No.
And if there is a national emergency, are we united enough to come together and beat it back and to help each other and survive it? I mean, I do worry about these things.
Well, speaking of which, I wanted to get your take on this and give us some insight on that mayor's race. But I mean, speaking of shamelessness, if you thought Seth Moulton was shameless, you haven't heard anything yet. Here's Andy Cuomo's first ad in his mayoral campaign, which he's leading in the polls from what I've read. Cuomo, his handling of COVID is his credential to be New York City's next mayor.
It was the greatest health crisis in our history. And when New Yorkers were desperate for leadership, Andrew Cuomo delivered. He didn't just provide information in those daily COVID briefings. He acted, building emergency hospitals and deploying first responders. And he provided hope that we'd pull through this together. We did. Now New Yorkers face a city unaffordable and streets that don't feel safe. And in a crisis, you want someone who's delivered for us before. Paid for by Cuomo for NYC.
Fact check, he's under DOJ investigation for his handling of COVID.
Does anyone say he did that and lied through his teeth?
Well,
daily?
but that's what I say. So where's New York City on Andy Cuomo? I mean, what he is trying to get away with, and what he may get away with, according to the polling, Michael?
Well, you're right. I mean, according to the polling in the primary, he's got essentially a 20-point lead, let's say, over the second place runner, who is a socialist and anti-Semite. So that's the bad news from New York. New York has this ranked choice voting, and so you get to pick 5 people in order of your preference in the primary, and there are about 8 Democrats running. And so there are these far left groups who are trying to defeat Cuomo by telling their supporters, pick any of these 5, rank them any way you want. Just don't rank the incumbent Eric Adams, who's running as an independent, or Cuomo. And the idea is that way you will marshal all of the far left votes will go to one candidate in this ranked choice system eventually, and that's how you'll beat Cuomo. Look, he's a politician to the core, right? So the fact that he would claim success for COVID is shocking but not surprising. This is who he is. I mean, I've talked to him about this issue, and particularly the nursing homes, which is what is being investigated, his testimony before Congress. He lied. There's no question he lied to Congress. I do question the timing, though, of an investigation so close to the primaries in next month. Mm-hmm. So I do question the timing. I think it's the kind of thing that they did to Donald Trump. And I don't think we should, as a government, be doing this to anybody. It is potentially election interference, and I would think the timing. I mean, these things happened years ago, so it doesn't seem to me to be a rush right now. Nonetheless, Cuomo is in the driver's seat in the primary. There will be a contested general election, no matter how the primary turns out. I think if Cuomo is the Democratic nominee, normally that guarantees it, but maybe not this time. I mean, other people are running on far left lines. Eric Adams is running as an independent. There will be a Republican nominee. So the vote could be split, and that could deprive the Democrat. But that doesn't mean the alternatives are better. So, look, I think Cuomo he's damaged. I think he's damaged personally. I don't think his heart is really in this. I think it's more a matter of pride. He'd much rather be running for governor or president. So he's kind of slumming it, I think, in his own mind here to be merely the mayor.
Interesting. Yeah.
One of the big problems is that so many of the problems in the city are things that he did as governor. For example, the laws that prosecutors basically find it impossible, even if they were willing to bring charges in certain cases. Everybody, it's like a turnstile system. You get arrested, you're back on the streets before the cops finish the paperwork. He did that. Taking away power from judges, do the congestion pricing, all kinds of school things that he set in motion when he was governor are now the things he's running against.
Yeah.
It's an odd situation, but he's been around a long time and got a long trail.
Well, I keep waiting, hopefully, for a surprise in a big blue city, and then I see Larry Krasner get reelected, and I'm looking at Andy Cuomo's poll numbers, and I'm discouraged. But, well, what are you going to do? Michael Goodwin, New York Post columnist. Michael, thank you as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you both.
And he joined us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.
Before you see it on TV, share it on Facebook, or read about it in the paper, hear it here first. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
It's almost time once again for the annual AM 560 golf outing presented by Signature Bank.